You're looking for a moisture balance that won't give you a headache a week later, something you can actually trust day after day, and that won't feel like you're throwing money at a gadget that just sits on a bench collecting dust. That's the exact spot where a lot of people pause, because the market is full of devices that brag about microgram resolution but hide clunky heating controls, confusing menus, or a calibration routine that feels like a mini lab in itself. If you've ever bought a balance that promised precision and then spent half your month wrestling with error codes, you know the risk of picking the wrong model. The MX50 from A&D Weighing is positioned as a set-and-forget moisture determiner, and the link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of work this instrument is built for. Moisture determination balances sit at the intersection of gravimetric weighing and controlled drying. Typical users are food scientists checking the water content of a batch of flour, pharmaceutical labs confirming the dryness of a powder, or even hobbyists who need to know how much moisture is in a sample of dried herbs. In those settings, you're not just weighing a static object, you're heating it, watching it lose weight, and then stopping at the exact moment the loss level's off. That means the heating system, the way you set programs, and how clearly the instrument tells you what's happening are all as important as the 0.001G readability. Who should actually consider the MX50? If you run a small to medium lab where you need to run multiple samples a day and you can't afford a full-size thermogravimetric analyzer, this balance hits a sweet spot. It offers 5 selectable measurement programs, so you can store a routine for, say, a 30-minute drying at 105°C for food samples, and another for a slower 70°C run for delicate pharmaceuticals. The 4 heating modes give you granular control over ramp-up speed, which is a real time saver when you're dealing with a mix of quick-dry and slow-dry materials. The vacuum fluorescent display, VFD, is bright enough to read in a dim lab corner, and the progress window shows real-time weight change, so you can walk away for a coffee and come back knowing exactly where the process is. On the flip side, if you're a hobbyist who only needs to dry a handful of samples a month, the MX50 might feel a bit over-engineered. The 115V power requirement means you need a dedicated outlet, and the unit's footprint is larger than a typical bench scale. For a casual user, the cost of that extra real estate and the need for a proper power line could outweigh the benefits of the built-in programs. Also, because the device is designed for consistent lab use, the self-check functions run automatically before each measurement. That's great for reliability, but it adds a few extra seconds to the start of each run. Nothing dramatic, but something you'll notice if you're trying to squeeze a dozen quick checks into a tight schedule. Let's get into the practical strengths that actually show up when you're using the MX50 day after day. The first thing I noticed during my trial run was the heating uniformity. The 4 heating modes let you choose between a gentle ramp that avoids sample scorching and a rapid ramp that gets you to target temperature in under 2 minutes. In a food lab scenario, that meant I could dry a high-moisture fruit puree without creating a crust that would trap water inside, something that cheaper balances with a single heating setting often struggle with. The second strength is the clarity of the VFD paired with the progress window. When the weight curve flattens, the display flashes stable, removing any guesswork about when to stop the run. That visual cue is a small feature, but it cuts down on operator error, especially when multiple technicians are sharing the same bench. Now for the practical weaknesses that matter. The balance's maximum capacity is 51G, which is fine for most powdered samples but limits you if you ever need to test larger bulk materials like a handful of dried herbs or a chunk of polymer. The 0.001G readability is impressive, yet it can feel a bit finicky if your sample's moisture loss is in the range of a few milligrams. You might end up chasing noise rather than meaningful data. The unit also doesn't have a built-in data logger, so you have to manually record the final moisture percentage or export it via the optional USB cable, which adds an extra step if you're trying to keep a digital lab notebook. Finally, the safe and reliable design is a plus, but it also means the housing is fairly robust and a bit heavier than a typical benchtop scale, so moving it between labs isn't as painless as you might hope. If you're still on the fence, ask yourself, do you need repeatable, automated drying cycles with clear visual feedback? Do you value a device that runs a self-check before each sample, so you're less likely to get a failed calibration surprise mid-run?